Jeremy Sosville of Sanhedrin. Welcome to 69 Face of Rock. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's good to be back.
Right, likewise.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on your new album. How did Heat Lightning take shape?
Well, kind of the same way they all do, where I just showed up to practice with some new riffs a while after the battery had charged from writing the previous record. And I guess the first two songs we started working on were Heat Lightning, the title track, and High Threshold for Pain. And those two songs are quite different from one another in terms of vibe and levels of aggression versus levels of melodicism. So after finishing those two, we kind of were like, well, if we can make these two songs fit on the same record, these two songs that sound like two totally different vibes, then I think we're going to be successful. So that was kind of our goal, was to find a way to make those two songs work together on a record with by surrounding it with other songs that had equal parts of variety and vibe and atmosphere.
Mhm. The title Heat Lightning has a very intense feel. What is the meaning behind the song and why you chose it as a title?
Well, Erica wrote the song, called it Heat Lightning. We didn't decide it as a record title for a while. And Heat Lightning as a phenomenon is like something you see in the distance, like a storm in the distance, but where you are, maybe you're unaffected by it.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of metaphorical things to take from that. I think in her case, it was inspired by her thoughts on climate change. But I think we also discussed while she was writing the lyrics that sort of paradox that Robert Oppenheimer dealt with, where he was the architect of the nuclear bomb, but also had feelings like, I just created something that could destroy everything. Um, so yeah, there's some different meanings to be taken from the song as well as the title itself. And then I thought it would be of all the song we've titled every album after a song on the album, and I felt like that title just had a great, cool ring to it that would get people's attention quickly.
Mhm. And how are people responding so far?
So far, quite well. We've had some good reviews come in, which that's always a double-edged sword because on one hand, if people were giving it a bad review, we're still quite proud of it. So I guess we would be sort of impervious to it, but um, it's getting well reviewed by the people who have heard it so far. The people at the label are really pushing it with some force, which feels very good. And yeah, the first single, Blind Wolf, has been our first, or it's been our most successful single we've had so far in terms of the amount of plays it's gotten on YouTube with the video, as well as the streams on the various platforms. So right now, it seems like we've got more momentum behind us than we've maybe ever had, which for only having one single out at the time of this recording feels pretty good.
Which is a good place to be at.
Yeah.
You are very active on the live front. So when did you even find time to write this album?
Well, I personally generally have guitar riffs and music flowing through me at every given moment that I'm awake. And sometimes I'll wake up even in the middle of the night and have to go to my studio and take something that I was thinking of half asleep and write it down or record it. So, um, but yeah, it's just something that we do play live a lot, but there's still plenty of time, and there's just a passion in the band for writing music. It's probably the most uh, meaningful thing we find about being in this band together. We love to play shows, we love to record, but that creative process has been the thing that's really been the driving force. So yeah, there's always enough time to find time to write, even if it means getting up at 2 in the morning because you can't sleep because you have an idea you have to jot down, which happens a lot.
That's the creative process.
Exactly.
What new aspects of Sanhedrin do you think the new album brings out?
Um, well, I think sonically the recording itself is a lot more crisp and clear. It's a little bit, well, maybe more than a little bit it's more aggressive sounding, sonically. So yeah, I feel like with this album, sonically, we've figured out what we're supposed to sound like. What we thought we should sound like in our head has really come through on this particular recording. And then, yeah, just sort of, we've been a band for 10 years now, so we have a really good understanding of what we are, what's expected by the people who support us, and we want to stay loyal to them while also bringing them along for maybe some adventure with us that we like to take as well.
Hmm. I'm gonna throw some titles at you, and you tell me what the songs are about. So, Blind Wolf, the first single.
Yeah. That song was probably the third or fourth song we wrote. Lyrically, it's about, it initially started as the lyrics being about the band and its relationship to one another. But then we started watching some cult documentaries when we were on tour in Texas, and we decided to implement some aspects of cults and that cult-like behavior into the lyrics as well. And frankly, if you join a band, it's kind of like joining a cult. You try to explain it to people who don't understand what the hell you're doing with your life. They don't understand why you're so happy doing something so unusual. And being in a band is sort of like being in a cult, and that song is a tribute to that.
That makes sense. King of Tides.
Yeah, that's musically our most cinematic sounding song, I think. And as such, it has a very narrative, cinematic sort of lyrical content as well. Erica wrote that about, the Puritans landing in America so many hundreds of years ago, and finding themselves with the indigenous people already there, and then the thoughts that one must go through on both sides of that equation when that happens. But it's done in a way lyrically that really complements the music in a way where I, as a listener, can just sort of close my eyes and see this scene playing out, and then having this big, heavy, plodding music behind it to sort of give it that extra, you know, sonic visualization, if you will.
That makes sense. Um, the song you already mentioned, High Threshold for Pain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just about being young and dumb and ready for anything. But also just having going through that part of your life where maybe you have, as the lyrics say, a chip on your shoulder, but warning against hanging on to that for too long as you get older. Maybe if you can ditch that and ditch your ego, you'll find more happiness. Because if you hang on to those things that made you angry as somebody that was younger, well into your adulthood, you might find that to be a destructive force in your life.
Hmm. When the Will Becomes the Chain.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because that was one of the last songs to be written lyrically and musically. So I think it's, from what I've understood talking to Erica about the lyrics and interpreting them myself, it's just about having something that you love so much that you just hang on to it. But sometimes that something can be something that winds up dragging you down and stopping you from having progress in other areas of your life. And then musically, uh, that was kind of inspired on my end by maybe some 70s Kiss meets some early Danzig, meets some kind of plodding doom stuff. And then I like how the song sort of takes a left turn at the end and sort of has this 70s album vibe where you just sort of go from, okay, here's this part of the song. Now we're going to take you down a back road somewhere totally different.
Mhm.
Jam out.
I can certainly relate to that on all levels.
Yeah.
The songs I had just mentioned are my early favorites. Which songs from the album appeal to you?
Well, it's hard to pick because, you get so invested in each one of them at different times while you're creating them. I've been really excited to see how many people are relating or being drawn into the fight of your life. I think I'm pretty proud of the musical part of that song, but it seems people are liking that as well as the lyrical content, which is just about what so many of us as fans and as musicians are, which is rock and roll lifers. We've loved it since we were in our adolescence, and there's probably a chance we're going to die loving it as much, if not more, than we did when we started.
You got that right.
I know you, yeah.
A new album always means a new opportunity. So, what new things are coming your way as far as promotion touring?
Yeah, well, March 20th, we're playing Hell's Heroes in Houston, Texas, which is probably the biggest US heavy metal festival that serves the underground, as far as I can tell. And then about a week and a half later, we'll be playing a post-festival show for the 2 Minutes to Tulsa Festival, the smaller festival. We're playing something there called the Bangover Brunch. So they have the festival on the weekend, and then Sunday afternoon, they have a band play, and people just sort of hang out and nurse their hangovers, I guess. In the end of April, on the 26th, we're going to Pittsburgh to play Lady Beast's record release show. They played our last record release show for Lights On. And then in May and June, we'll be in Europe with our good friends Savage Master, including a stop at the Rock Hard Festival in Germany, which is something I'm really excited about because I've been watching footage of that festival for years, thinking to myself, man, it would be cool to play that someday. And here we go, we get to play it.
That's some exciting plans.
I'd
Um,
say.
and speaking of playing live and being on tour, you certainly spend a lot of time on the road. So, what are the best and the worst aspects of touring for you?
Well, the best part is the show itself. As a musician, I mean, for me as a guitar player, I love that I get put in a position where I get to play my guitar at a great volume and play songs I wrote and see the reaction of the crowd, see people, singing the words and, the enthusiasm, meeting the fans after the show at the merch table and just, hearing their stories of why they love the band or what they relate to. I find that to be a fascinating experience. Uh, the things I don't like really are just the things that everybody doesn't like about it, which is the lack of sleep, the poor food choices, not knowing if you're going to come home with having broken even, and just having a lot of time, yeah, in your own head. If you got an 8 hour drive from somewhere to somewhere, it's just like it's not the most exciting thing. It is like at first when you're first starting out to doing it, but that kind of stuff after a while, once you've seen it a few times, it's not as fresh and as new. So I would like for us to get to some new places to get that excitement again.
As a warning to other bands, what is like the most disastrous show or part of a tour you ever faced?
Disastrous show. I've had, anytime you have equipment failures, it's pretty much a bummer. I would say the most disastrous moment I've ever had was with my old band Black Anvil when we got into an accident in a snowstorm and our trailer flipped and the front end of our van was sticking out onto Interstate 80 with tractor trailers driving by every so often and having to direct traffic while trying to figure out how we were going to play the show in Salt Lake City that night.
Well, luckily,
So that's kind of almost worst case scenario, but not quite. Yeah.
that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
Yeah. But
Um,
those things stay with you.
yeah, well, you do. So after what, 10 years of being a band, how would you say you guys change as people, as musicians?
Well, it's a lot of changes as people. We've all sort of gone our own ways in terms of our, you know, individual lives go. I no longer live in Brooklyn, which is where the band started. I live about 400 miles from the other two now. So that's a big change. Um, so it's just sort of making the effort to keep the band relevant to us as individuals during all those individual life changes has been a lot of work, but we all clearly think it's worth it at this point. Um, on a positive side, we can really communicate quickly in the creative process. We know how to speak each other's languages to get an idea out and to get it germinating from a simple idea to a song quite quickly now, because we just know how to communicate. We know how each other receives information as musicians and just as people.
Do you feel Heat Lightning is like a definite statement from Sanhedrin musically?
I suppose I do, but I know that I have felt that way about every record before it when it came out.
Mhm.
So this is the best representation of this band at this time. I think if you're a fan of our previous work, we're not going to take you down some mysterious road that you didn't expect, but we do always include some plot twists and turns, musically, lyrically, with every record to keep it fresh and interesting for anybody who's into it. But yeah, I think this is the definitive record. This is what we sound like in 2025. This is what we are and who we are right now.
That
It's a
makes
time capsule.
Finally, how do your lives look like for the 5 minutes that you're not touring?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends on who you ask. Nathan, the drummer, he works at he's the head of sound at a very famous theater in Brooklyn, the King's Theater. Um, Erica is a live sound tech and a live sound instructor at some colleges in Brooklyn. And then I am up in northern New York State, where I'm teaching guitar lessons to a lot of younger folks here in my hometown. And I got a couple other musical projects I'm working on and just sort of patching together a what you would call a gig life to make ends meet here. But my cost of living is quite a bit lower than it was when I lived in Brooklyn, so it's a lot easier to do.
That makes sense. Oh, obviously. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking your time and talking to me. Good luck with the new album.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you again. Appreciate it.